Hi, and thank you for tuning in to the Daily Dose for Spiritual Growth. We are starting a brand new week, and with that, we're starting a brand new topic. If you are a regular watcher of the Daily Doses, first of all, thank you. I hope you find them helpful in your own personal relationship with God. I know Pastor Nabil and I enjoy doing them and just diving into his word and sharing some thoughts with you of what the Lord's speaking to us. But if you are a regular watcher, you know that last week we actually ended our work through the book of Luke. And so we are here at a new week, and we have really endless opportunities of what we could talk about. And so I really was thinking and praying about what I'd like to talk about this week. And really this word kept coming to mind. It's been kind of an anthem in my life right now. It's really what God's working on with me. And that word is discipline. Not a fun word, right? You might have been like super excited and now you're like, what? But what comes to mind when you hear the word discipline? It's kind of a jam-packed word full of a lot of different meanings and different angles you could take it from. So maybe your first thought was like correction, right? Discipline from a parent or discipline at work. Maybe you think of something you're going through. Maybe you're a teenager watching this or a young adult and who still lives at home and you are experiencing discipline. Maybe when you think of discipline, you think about having a disciplined life, maybe having self-control, being methodical, being persistent and perseverant through struggle. You're disciplined. The reason why this word has been really in the forefront of my mind is obviously we just are getting to the end of January. January is such a time of year where so many people decide they're going to be disciplined, right? We have so many goals. Maybe you have New Year's resolutions. I know many of you just ended the 21 days of prayer and fasting with us at Shrewsbury Assembly where you had to be disciplined. And there's such an emphasis on that at the beginning of the year. But if you're like me, by this time of the year, that thought and motivation is long gone. And I'm like, we're almost into February. And it's like, discipline is not the thing we're focusing on. Now we're just into the regular routine, busyness, craziness of life. And we might have forgotten even some of those goals we had, those dreams for this year have already kind of fallen aside. And so discipline is very important, living a disciplined life. But also receiving discipline is very important in the Christian walk with the Lord. And so anyway, that's what we're going to be talking about this week. Now, I was researching, I looked up so many different scriptures on discipline, and it talked about all the different kinds. But when I came across Hebrews chapter 12, I found that there's many, many verses that are dedicated to this very topic. And so I thought this week we'd sit right there and just slowly read through it together. And so if you have your Bibles, if you want to leave it open to Hebrews 12 this week, it'll be really convenient for you to jump right in. And each day I'm just going to read a couple of verses and kind of chat about it, okay? So today I simply want to read Hebrews 12, 1 through 4. Okay, here we go. I'm reading from the New Living Translation. It says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up. Now let's pause there. What's going on? Now, if you flip back into the chapter right before, Hebrews 11 is often called the chapter of faith. In my Bible, it says great examples of faith, and it goes through story after story after story of men and women from the Bible who did extraordinary things for God through his power by faith. Just a couple weeks ago, Pastor talked about Abraham and Isaac and how he was willing to sacrifice his son Isaac on the altar, and yet God provided a ram. And his story is caught in that chapter of faith in Hebrews 11. It talks about Moses. It talks about so many people. Go back and read it. It's awesome. But here we are in chapter 12, and the author is reminding us, hey, all those people that have gone before, in biblical times, in modern day times, maybe your grandparents, relatives who were people of faith that have already passed and are now in heaven. He says, we're surrounded by that cloud, up in the clouds, right? We're surrounded by this cloud of witnesses that are really, really cheering us on in our faith. Let that be an encouragement. But he also challenges us here. He also corrects us here a little bit. He says, you want to run that race for the Lord? What's holding you back? What's weighing you down? And he identifies that here as sin. He says, what are those sins that are burdening you, that are making it difficult for you to run your race of faith for God? He says, strip them off. Free yourself from those things so you can run. He continues here, and let us run with endurance the race God has set before us. Verse 2, we do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus. Who is he? The champion who initiates and perfects our faith. Another version says the author and perfecter of our faith. It goes on. Because of the joy awaiting him, he endured the cross, disregarding its shame. Now he is seated in the place of honor beside God's throne. Think of all the hostility he endured from sinful people, and then you won't become weary and give up. After all, you have not yet given your lives in your struggle against sin. Amazing. So he talks first about this cloud of witnesses. Hey, there's people, and heaven is full of people cheering you on when things get tough. He says, strip off the sin, strip off the things that's weighing you back, run your race to honor and glorify God. But then he brings it into a focal point of Jesus himself. He says, hey, you want to be motivated in this race? You want to be motivated when times get tough, when struggles come, when hardship is knocking at your door? Remember Jesus. He's our champion in this because he lived a sinless life here on earth. And yet why? Why was he able to intentionally, purposefully, willingly, obediently walk all the way to the cross, giving his very life for you and me? Because of the joy set before him. You see, Jesus knew his purpose. And so when hardship came, when discipline came, when chaos came, when pain came, when all the things we experience in life come, and we feel a little crazy and out of control, Jesus was able to stay on mission because he knew his. Do you know yours? What is your purpose? What gets you up in the morning? What keeps you going when hard times come? You know, it's really easy to give in and give up. It's really easy to, quote, throw in the towel and just be like, I'm done with this. And so many people do. And yet when we read Hebrews 11, we're reminded of people who didn't. We're reminded of people who stayed faithful, who faced hardship, who faced struggle, who faced disease, who faced opposition, and yet they continued to be faithful to God. Not perfect, but serving a God who was. And so as you think about today, your own life, think about your purpose. Jesus was able to be obedient and literally going to the cross because he knew his purpose and he kept his eyes fixed on God. And the Bible here now instructs us to do the same with him. When things get tough, when things get hard, when the race gets long, when you're weary and tired, do you know where you're running? Do you know what your focus is? Because if it's anything but God, if it's anything but fulfilling his will in your life, if it's anything but honoring and glorifying him with yourself, your tiredness will take over and give in, and you might get taken out of the race. I want to encourage you today to think about your purpose. Think about what motivates you. Think about what's burdening you and keeping you ensnared instead of being able to run that race productively. And pray about that. It'll help you as we continue on the chapter tomorrow. Hey, thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope to see you again tomorrow for another Daily Dose for Spiritual Growth.